tell us a little bit about Moms Across America and how you founded this.
Sure. Yeah. Moms Across America is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit. We call ourselves a National Coalition of Unstoppable Moms. And I started it 12 years ago because I noticed that there just was not enough of the voices of the mothers being heard. So I wanted to amplify the voices of moms because people trust moms, and moms buy 85% of the food. And we're at the forefront of taking care of our children's health for the most part. It's mostly the mothers that take the children to the doctors, and they notice when they're acting irritable after eating food. The father might think it's a phase, but the mother's like, oh, no, they just had red food dye for the, the third time now he's getting in a fight with his brother, that type of
Yep.
thing. So women tend to have a certain intuitiveness for their children's health like that, and are the first ones to notice things.
Yep.
So what happened was I was volunteering with Prop 37, the GMO labeling initiative. Do you remember that back in California in 2012?
Yeah. Yep.
And I was sitting at the back of the room there when she was acknowledging everybody, the volunteer organizer. And I just had a thought like, how come she's at the front of the room, like a leader, and I'm at the back of the room?
Mm.
Nothing wrong with that. Totally nothing wrong with that, right? And but I was just like acknowledging my actions. Like I had passed out flyers at the farmers markets about GMOs, but I hadn't taken on leadership, right? And again, not everybody needs to do that, but I was just like, my actions would have been different if I had taken on leadership, right? And so I started the inquiry of what if I did take on leadership? What if I said, I'm the one to transform the food industry? And not me like ego,
Yep.
but like, I'm not going to wait for Jeffrey Smith and Robin and Brian. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do something about this. My actions can contribute to transforming the food industry. So I took that on, and within a few days, I had created Moms Across America March to Label GMOs event
Yep.
in Fourth of July parades. And we had 179 groups join into Fourth of July parades in 37 states all across America. And so we reached thousands locally and millions nationally in a single day,
Yes.
and went on to have around that time we went from zero to a reach of 300,000 a week on Facebook.
Yep.
And we had 600 leaders create over 1,000 events in the first 5 years that are logged onto the back end of our website.
Yep.
And we've had 3,000 volunteers since then. And we've reached a couple 100 million people, not just in the United States, but around the world. I've toured and spoken and published books in other countries.
Yep.
And it's just took on a whole life of its own. And that's because moms care, first of all, and they share.
Yep.
And they are not afraid of what people think about them, right? And they won't stop. They won't allow criticism or threats or anything like that to stop them. And you can fire a scientist and you can fire a doctor, but you can't fire a mom. So we're going to keep doing this.
Yeah.
And that's been the power of our movement, has been, that's why my book is called Unstoppable. It's
Yep.
love, really, is the power of our movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, beautifully said. And yeah, it is love. I mean, for you, this started with your own kids, right? I mean, can you get into a little bit
Yes.
about the symptoms you experienced with your own kids that led you on this path?
Sure. Yeah. The reason why I even took notice of the post on Facebook by Robin O'Brien and then later on Jeffrey Smith about GMOs was because I was plagued with over 20 different food allergies from that my children had. So eating was, a very stressful situation, and going to social outings was like a landmine. I was not a pleasant person. I actually had somebody tell me, I first met you, you seemed really serious and like not very warm and friendly. But then I went through some transformational like seminar work, and I became, more open and positive and everything. So they commented on that. But I was like, yeah, it was because I thought my kid could die at a play date from a cookie that was left on the coffee table that had a walnut in it, right? Like I was stressed out all the time
Yeah.
because I thought my children could die from food. And that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like we have kind of normalized that now. Everybody has a kid with a food allergy or
Yeah.
autism symptoms or allergies or autoimmunes. I
Yep.
was dealing with all of that with my children.
Yeah.
And once I learned about GMOs and glyphosate,
Yeah.
removed them from my children's diet, especially my older one who had a red rash around his mouth that was cracked and
Yeah.
bleeding and swollen.
Yep.
When we took GMOs out of his diet, within 4 months, he dramatically improved.
Wow.
And I'd like to tell you the story about that, if that's okay.
Should go for it. Yeah,
The background
absolutely.
on it. Yeah. So my son Ben, he almost died when he was 5 years old from a pecan in the stuffing on Thanksgiving evening.
Oh my
It,
gosh.
it was horrifying. His body puffed up like a raspberry. We had to give the EpiPen in him when one of us couldn't pull it out. So when the other one did, blood spurted across the room. I mean, it was like people were screaming. It was mayhem. We didn't even think about calling the ambulance. We just got in the car and drove to the hospital, right? And they pump steroids in him, which is there's a whole other set of side effects for that. But he lived. But for the next 5 years, like I said, I felt like every social situation, even going to Nana's house or to grandma's house, was like a landmine, right? Because I didn't have control over everything. So about 5 years later, when he was 9 years old, he was sitting at the breakfast table in the kitchen, and he had the red swollen lips, and it's like a vacuum cleaner stuck on his face.
Yep.
And it had been coming, it was lasting for 2 weeks at a time, on and off for about 7 months.
Yeah.
And I had taken him to about six different doctors, and they were all like, you could put this cream on him, or,
Yeah.
we don't know what this is. We'll do more testing, all those types of answers. And he looked at me and he's like, Mom, I wish all my allergies would go away. And I said, Me too, buddy. But in my head, I was thinking, that's never going to happen
Yeah.
because the doctors had told me it wasn't. My doctors told me his allergies were only going to get worse. In fact, nut allergies are life-threatening and he could die from having even the tiniest bit of nut. And so I then realized what I was saying in my head, that's never going to happen. And I realized that was disempowering, right? That was being a victim of the system, of the situation, seeing myself as small, seeing him as small. And I said, wait a second, that's not what I'm committed to. I had made this sort of motto for myself, this creed of being courageous, creative, and a huge contribution to the world. That's who I know myself to be. And so I said, well, if I'm doing that, what could happen? What could be possible? And then I thought of, well, my cousin Sarah had gone gluten-free for a year. And she had healed her gut enough. So she was able to eat a piece of wedding cake at a wedding or a slice of pizza at a birthday party, right? And not have a total breakout or, headaches or rashes or whatever. So I thought of her. I reminded Ben of her. And I said, Ben, would you like to one day be able to eat a slice of pizza at a birthday party? And his eyes got big and he said, yes. And I said, well, then would you do whatever it takes? Would you drink green drinks and try acupuncture and, like do alternative therapies? Like, and in my head, I'm thinking, I will eat birdseed with this kid, right? To do this. Like that my commitment was like, I'm there with you, right? Would you do? And so I asked him, would you do whatever it takes? And he thought about it seriously. And then he said, yes. And I said, then I promise you, buddy. And I put out my hand and shook his hand. We have a deal. You are going to get better.
Yeah.
So he said, okay. And he got better. I mean, but that moment was like, it was like a white light, holy crap, I don't know how I'm going to do this moment because I didn't know how he was going to get better. But
Yeah.
I did know that if I made a promise to my son, like if anybody makes a promise to anybody, you then take actions that you normally would not take,
Right.
right? You step it up because your word is on the line.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And we watched movies and we did acupuncture and green drinks and Chinese herbs and all of that. And because I also educated him, and he was open to being educated about the food supply, he took it on himself. And within 4 months, first went GMO free because I wasn't as aware of glyphosate and having to go 100% organic yet.
Yeah.
And when he went GMO free within 4 months, that instead of a line all around his mouth and swollen and cracked and dry and peeling and all that bleeding, it was just a faint pink line and it was underneath his lip when he was exposed. And we
Yeah.
discovered that his allergen was to carrageenan. And we did
Yeah.
that through an iridologist. She looked at his eyes and did a study of his eyes, the iris of his eyes, iridology, which I wouldn't have done unless I had gone through this program called Landmark, where they really educate you that, or they really have a distinction that anything is possible, right? And so I was like, okay, if anything's possible, I'm going to take him to this iridologist. And so she helped determine he had an allergy to carrageenan. It was verified by accidentally being exposed to carrageenan and that happening again. And anyway, we discovered that. But what I did learn in that process was like, it's not just the carrageenan,
Yeah.
right? Which is in hot dogs and creamy things, ice creams,
Yeah.
sauces, everything kids like.
Yeah.
Because, it's just not right that a kid can eat a hot dog one day, but not the next,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That's not the kid. There's something going on with the food.